I review Enemy and Shadows for Warhammer 4th Edition and The North Road by Questgivers, today on Dungeon Craft. Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor Dungeonmaster, and this channel is about playing the ultimate game of D&D and other role-playing games.
And I'm Deathbringer. Level up your game by subscribing and click the bell icon so you'll be informed when we upload new videos every week.
Today we're looking at the Enemy and Shadows Companion by Cubicle 7 and The North Road by Questgivers. Two campaign books centered around a similar theme, roads, which is cool because roads are a natural way to connect places and events, and if you lived in the Middle Ages, you would have spent a lot of time traveling on them. Enemy and Shadows is for Warhammer 4th Edition, although it's completely compatible with the 1st and 2nd edition, and North Road is system agnostic, but it's got a similar low fantasy vibe that fits in really well with Warhammer or OSR products, although it can work with 5e as well. Let's look at the Enemy and Shadows first. Enemy and Shadows Companion is the companion to this book. Enemy and Shadows, which is the first part of the Enemy Within campaign, which is Cubicle 7's reimagining of that classic campaign for Warhammer. Early editions have them printed together, but I really think that especially this version makes it stand alone as itself, and it really deserves its own book. I love this cover art. It is dark and rainy. It really captures the grim, dark world in which Warhammer is set. If you watch my other reviews, you know I hate wasted space, and here on the inside cover we have a picture of the beer belly, which is a bit of a play on words and an in-joke, and it's the ship that the characters will most likely take up the Reich when they go on their adventures. I mentioned in my Ravenloft review that so much of 5e, if you look at it, it's got this blue monochromatic color palette, but here we have a lot of rich browns and grays, and with splashes of color here like purple. This clocks in at 120 pages or thereabouts, and it's got an introduction by Graham Davis, who designed the original Enemy Within. I spoke to Graham at Gen Con, when the last time we had a Gen Con, and he told me about these plans to redo Enemy Within in a sort of director's cut, and that's what they've gone for, and I think achieved here. There are a number of guest commentaries, Easter eggs, all of the in-jokes explained, and great adventure hooks on the bottom of these pages, so there's a number of ways to get the characters involved in the adventures. The first section is on the Empire, who is Emperor Karl Franz, and who are the electors, which are important details that have never been revealed in this much detail before. And it tells us how guilds are organized, and how the common people live, and how taxes are collected, and how the Empire's roads and highways are run. And I just want to stop and take a moment to talk about just this gorgeous artwork. So much of the tone of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay has always been conveyed through the art rather than the mechanics. I've pointed out in other videos that Moldvay Basic D&D is actually much more deadly than Warhammer. But the Warhammer art conveys that grim world of perilous adventure the game has always promised. The characters look grotesque with exaggerated features, facial blemishes, and suspicious glares. They look different than the 5e world where everyone is attractive and they look like they're characters in a fantasy theme park. I really like the consistency of this art. It looks like the same artist did them all, and I love the black and white. It looks really unique. Chapter 5 on travel is absolutely great. If you've ever seen my episode of Dungeon Craft, The Bone Road, where I go over all these road encounters and I take into consideration all the inclement weather, and I give you this chart with 100 encounters, very similar here. We have different types of weather depending on the season: winter, spring, fall, summer. Positive random road encounters, coincidental encounters, harmful encounters. Then we have a section on the road wardens who keep the roads safe. And this is a list of all the NPCs you can meet on the way, along with an illustration from each of them that really allows you as a game master to imagine, like, what would this person look like? What do they sound like? You can almost hear how they sound when you look at those pictures. Chapter 8, also very useful, mutants in the Empire. So in Warhammer, many of the people have come into contact with warpstone, which causes mutations. So this is a list of physical random mutations, fixations, mental mutations. Then we have a guide to the Purple Hand, which is a dangerous chaos cult. Some optional chaos spells, as well as some random horrors you can throw at the players. And it concludes with 2 scenarios. One is the affair of the hidden jewel, which has been reprinted a number of times, but I think this is the best iteration here. One of the cool things about this plot is it deals with a band of just bandits. Like, there's nothing supernatural about them. And it really captures that Warhammer vibe that sometimes you're just fighting against other people. The Pandemonium Carnival is new. It features a traveling carnival, like a freak show, where characters can come into contact with these various mutants and beastmen. It provides a nice segue into the Bogenhofen module. Here we have some characters, so you could just take them and play if you'd like, as well as these gorgeous maps of a castle and a coaching inn. And on the back cover, we have the different types of vehicles with them illustrated, so the Game Master can better imagine them and convey that to their players. Beautiful craftsmanship and presentation in this book. It is really outstanding. And were I running Enemy Within again from scratch, I've run a number of times, I would definitely start here and then move on to the Enemy in Shadows. While not absolutely essential when combined with Enemy in Shadows, it creates a strong start to what I believe is one of the best fantasy RPG campaigns of all time. Which brings us to The North Road by Questgivers. DM Scotty from the DM's Craft YouTube channel and DMG from DMG Info. Full disclosure, I was sent a free copy of this book because I collaborated with Questgivers on my module MacDeath, but my work does not appear inside, so I feel I can be reasonably impartial. It is softcover, 400 pages, 16 adventures, enough to keep you playing probably for a year. It also features a unique design and layout. It's meant to look distressed, so if you ding up the book, it's still going to look good. And inside there are pencil shavings and coffee rings and little post-it notes. Just like I put post-its here, you'll find post-its like the chief librarian is a hag in disguise, so you don't forget the major plot points. The art is really unique, black and white ink style that's very reminiscent of old White Dwarf magazines from the early 1980s before Games Workshop turned it into a glossy catalog for their products, and Photoshop pictures of Scotty's terrain. And it really is original. I've never seen anything like this. So there's no wasted space. Here we have the bios of the authors, and one of the things you'll immediately notice when we go into the first adventure, Death and Taxes, most scenarios will start with an overview for the Dungeon Master, like several pages of what's going on. Not here. Here, they start out on a ship. Here are the general utterances by the sailors. And when they get off, here's a list of rumors and who says that rumor. So we have old traders, young assistants, elderly women, and they all have something different to say. And instead of having a big info dump for the DM or the players, all the info, all the backstory is revealed through talking through the NPCs. By speaking to these NPCs, we'll learn that this is a matriarchal society. And this small boy will fill in a lot of the details of what it's like to live there. And this is a great example of world building by talking to NPCs. I've often said on this channel that world building is very overrated. And many game masters make the mistake of doing these large info dumps about the backstory of their world. It's far more effective to reveal the world through conversation. And here they do a great job of planting the seeds for later, like Blood Moon Ceremony, the White Castle, Wizard Weed. These seeds are sowed right up front. When someone asks the priestess, what do you think of the Mountain Clan? She says, a bunch of giant barbarians. Alice employs one of their kind. So you never have to think about what an NPC is saying or have to flip to a different section to remember what they know. One of the things you won't notice is statistics from monsters. They don't include them. They don't include monster stat blocks, which saves a lot of space. So here you're getting all adventure, and it can be used for any game system, any level, although I generally think it's going to work best for lower level characters. And an example of Messenger in the Woods, the characters have to travel through the woods, and they're dark, scary woods, and it's a lot easier to keep them on the path if they can't, say, fly. But this is a very innovative adventure with a unique timing mechanism. At the beginning of the scenario, the Game Master puts out a 12-sided die on 12, and that represents the sun die. That is how many hours of sunlight there is before the sun goes down, and the players have to make it through the woods by that time. And there are a number of encounters, like with scary monsters like the Blight Bug. Each of these cost a certain amount of time, and if the characters are wounded and they rest, they will lose light. So it provides motivation and a narrative drive for the player characters because they want to get out before the sun goes down. Here's a great new monster called a Drek. It's essentially a cross between a goblin and a bat and a porcupine. And there are no typical monsters used in this module. They are all original monsters, so they will surprise your players. There is a character here called Doug Scullery. In my opinion, you just gotta level up as a game master if you can think of a name as cool as that. I also love Dark City, where the characters arrive at a place called Foosterberg, and it's so authoritarian. Just about everything they do is a crime, and every transgression is punishable by death by being fed to this monster. Thief is a whodunit style murder mystery, and it features one of my favorite characters, Scratch the dog. So when you talk to Scratch, there are two boxes here. The first is what players who will see objectively. Like if you say, "Who's a good boy then?" a delighted Scratch will woof and roll over, exposing his stomach while wagging his tail. But if you're a druid or a ranger or someone who can speak dog, he'll say, "I'm Scratch and I'm a good boy. I'm so good, we could definitely be friends. You look like such nice people. I'm so good, we're friends now, friends." And Scratch can actually help you solve the mystery, which is really well laid out. Mysteries are always difficult to write. Also very original is On the Run, which is an extended chase where characters get pursued by a death wheel, which is essentially a hamster wheel filled with Dreks with a magic user on top shooting lightning bolts at them. And they have a cart damage table, so as you race down this hill being pursued by this wheel of death, like there are chunks of your cart flying off. And they have every obstacle out of an Indiana Jones movie, like a winding road, a steep gradient, a wall of fire, a rickety wooden bridge. Of all the adventures, this is the one that I most want to play as a player. I mean, this seems like so much fun, and I've never seen anything like this. And that's saying something for a person that's read 40 years of role-playing game modules. One of the things I love is the change of pace. After this long chase, you get Grip of Evil, which is a slow burn ghost story, kind of like Haunting of Hill House. And it's got this great chart of spooky sounds, very helpful, and a very innovative dungeon where as you go through it, you have these encounters, and the first player rolls a d12, and you get one of these encounters, and then the next player rolls a d10, and the next player rolls a d6. So instead of having a traditional map, you have this encounter map, and as a result, you can play this several times, and you will always get a different result. The final scenario, White Castle, weaves all of the plot threads together and sees a lot of NPCs returning. And it features a castle siege, and that's one of my most popular topics on Dungeon Craft Facebook group. Like, how do you run a siege? And here, the player characters go through the castle, fighting individual fights and gaining battle progress points. And if they gain enough, they will win the battle. So the outcome is determined by what they do, not just what the massive army is doing. If I had to describe the North Road in one word, I would have to say fun. It is dark and grim, but not gory dark. It's like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom dark. Lots of useful tools for DMs, and it makes playing NPCs easy. You have to do the monster stat blocks yourself, but that means more adventure packed into less space. It's perfect for old school D&D, The Witcher, Warhammer, but it will work with any game system, and I highly recommend it. If you play 3 weeks on, 1 week off, or every other week, this is easily enough material for an entire year's worth of play. The North Road is available at Questgivers.com, link below, and as long as you're there, pick up my module MacDeath as well. I also dig DM Scotty's Luck Dice, a more fun alternative to inspiration points, and my players love them too. And the Enemy Within Companion is available at Amazon.com, link below. Also below, you'll find a link to Dungeon Craft on Facebook and Patreon, so check it out. And may all your rolls be 20s.
Deathbringer again. Click on this video on Cinematic Advantage. Sure, you've probably got work to do. Just blow it off. You know you want to.